Still, no hugely significant progress that I can see in the Transnet strike. That's after unions first demanded 12%. Transnet has said again and again and again it can't afford a major increase. It's offered 4.5%. The strike has seen 3 cabinet ministers saying publicly they're extremely worried about the impact of this industrial action. European coal prices are spiking. Mining companies can't get their coal through our ports to Europe to take advantage of that. What does that mean? In the end, it means less money is coming into the country, less tax money available to pay for social grants as well. Andrew Levy is a Labour analyst. He joins us now. Andrew, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. This is a strike that started with a big gap between what the unions were demanding and what Transnet were offering. When you start with such a big gap, does it always take a long time to get somewhere in the middle?
That's absolutely true, Stephen. And, you know, if you look at the other demands, it doesn't matter whether they're in the public sector or the private sector, you'll find exactly the same pattern. The union negotiation strategy appears to be to come in at a ridiculously high number and then to refuse to move. Now, 20 years ago, that was successful. Different circumstances, but it seemed to work. The employers were more willing to move, not wanting to be branded under the various codes, the EEC code, the Sullivan code, as anti-union. That environment, of course, has changed, but the negotiating strategy has not. Now, government has tried to affect this by publishing a code of good practice on collective bargaining, which has a section which tries to encourage unions to make realistic claims. Amongst other things, it says that as part of the preparation for negotiations, they should look at the settlements happening in the market. They should listen to or get advice from labour economists, labour market experts on what's going on in order to frame their demands properly. But the unions have paid no heed to this, and they know that they're not going to settle anywhere near their number. So we're going to have to see who blinks first. And I think there's one other thing that one just needs to say, that arguably this is bad faith bargaining. Firstly, to come in with a number which cannot be justified on any rational basis in terms of what's going on. And secondly, negotiation works on the you move, I move convention, and the unions are not following that convention. So there would be an opportunity for Transnet, arguably, to approach the court on the basis of the code of good practice to try and persuade the court that this is bad faith bargaining. And to order them to bargain in good faith. Now, this would be pioneering, but I think it would be more effective than trying to argue whether the strike is legal or not. I mean, the answer is we've got the strike, and what are we going to do to end it?
So I hear your point that it might be bad faith bargaining to ask for 12%. But wasn't Transnet's original offer 1.5%? I mean, couldn't the union say, well, Transnet was guilty of bad faith bargaining in the first place, and that even 4% is quite significantly below inflation?
Yes, they could. But two things on that one. The first thing is that to dispose of inflation, there's no formula that says your opening offer must be inflation. But to open at 1.5% generally would be so unrealistic as to also possibly be bad faith bargaining. However, if you ask about affordability, in other words, can they afford to pay the employer the increase that's being demanded, or what can they afford to offer, it may well be that in the case of Transnet, 1.5% is the affordable number. But nevertheless, in the face of strong and tough unions, they are not going to get away with 1.5%. Could they get away with 4%? Yes, 4.5%. I think they could, but it would take a very, very long strike. And I don't think that the economy could withstand that. I think the government would probably intervene. We've already seen the suggestion that certain big producers are offering to help finance the increase. At the end of it all, that would be a very, very unfortunate precedent for our wage bargaining, because it'll become a standard demand. Well, if you can't pay, get your wealthy friends to chip in. That's going to take us down a very, very nasty road.
Andrew, it seems to me that there's something else going on here. So you have pressure on all sides in a way that maybe we haven't seen before. Government wants the strike over. Okay, 3 cabinet ministers issuing a statement. I can't remember the last time that happened. Union leaders are probably under more pressure than they've ever been before from their members, because their members are under intense pressure. It's not just that their members have a job, it's that their members are probably looking after more people than they've ever looked after before because of what happened during the pandemic. So there's that. And then you've got Transnet itself, state capture, trying to sort itself out, etc., new CEO, etc. They're under intense pressure too. So we're possibly in a more pressured situation than we've ever seen before. Does this then, what happens? I mean, does it become who blinks first? I mean, does it make it impossible to reach a deal because there's just too much pressure?
No, a deal will be reached. That is always the case. If I were to offer a guess and stick my neck out, which is risky, I would say that towards the end of next week, we are going to get pressure from government, seen or unseen, who will say to Transnet, give them 6 or give them 6.5%, and we'll find the money for it somewhere. That is my guess. Now, at the end of it, strikes always settle sooner or later, but it may well be that the pattern that we're seeing now, because we've seen this before at Eskom, where Pravin Gordhan, as I understand it, instructed them to settle at 6%, where in point of fact, collective bargaining is not working. It is wrong in terms of the market for government to intervene at that level, albeit a quasi-government organization, because all that's going to happen in the future is where they can, they're going to expect or extract whatever they can from the employer and then look to government to fund the balance from somewhere else. That would be an unfortunate thing. And in a purist way, government should really not necessarily interfere with collective bargaining. But as you say, there's extreme pressure on all sides, and something is going to have to burst, because the ongoing damage is going to be huge. If this was in the private sector, I would imagine that the employers would hold fast. They may go to 4%. One of the unions in this strike, UNTU, have indicated that 8% would do it, which means they would take 6%. But, I don't think we can afford a 4-week or 6-week strike, which is what it would take, quite possibly, to get a settlement or for the strike to collapse. So it really is a question of who's going to blink first. Unfortunately, this comes at a critical time for us and for the economy. And one says, look, this union is stronger and more powerful unions. Why could they not take a broader view, as NAMSA did in 2020, and said, we will put a moratorium on wage increases this year because we're trying to save jobs? I think that would have been a line that I would have advised them to take. Alternatively, I would advise that this should be pushed into wage arbitration, if possible, and as soon as possible, for the simple reason that a wage arbitrator is going to make a settlement which is market related. There's no way an arbitrator is going to settle at 8 or 12%.
Andrew Levy, so much more to talk about. Thank you very much indeed, a Labour analyst. Really do